everybody, Ty here. Um, I'm still kind of coming off of yesterday, honestly. Wow. I'm amazed at what we saw in yesterday's live stream and also what happened beyond that point. We're going to get into some of that a little bit later. In future videos, we might actually have to come out about this storm, some analysis here, because there were a couple extra surprises there. Had a fleeting, had a sneaky suspicion, I guess you could say, that something was going to happen a little closer towards my area. Fortunately, maybe unfortunately, depending on your perspective, my area didn't really get that much. But a little further to the south, they got slammed with a sneaky little inch of snow, and it caused a lot of problems. Again, we'll get into that a little bit later. But let's get into the totals real quick of this event overall here, because the areas in which we're seeing these significant totals is surprising. 3 to 5 inches was the range in Houston. We've gotten at least up to 3 towards the west side of town. A little bit further off to the east is where we got to 4 to possibly even 6 inches of snow, heading all the way over towards Beaumont. Isolated pockets potentially being higher than that. Then as we got over towards Lake Charles, this is where we start getting that half a foot range. Big winners of this whole event have really been right outside of Lafayette. If you don't remember, and if you didn't catch the stream yesterday, there was actually a blizzard warning for this area. That's the first time that has ever happened for this region, and it's the furthest south that blizzard warning has ever been issued for in the history of the National Weather Service. It's absolutely insane to see these totals that we've gotten here. Huma in Louisiana actually got up to a foot. Also crazy. 8 inches in New Orleans shattered. Like, I can't even begin to describe or count how many daily records have also been shattered from yesterday's winter storm event. Thankfully, it doesn't look like there was a whole lot going on in the way of ice. There were places where the roads did indeed ice over, but for the most part, we had predominantly snow. So, in some ways, that was the best case scenario. I would take snow over a quarter inch of ice any day, because ice, there's nothing fun about that. At least the kids can enjoy themselves in some snow versus dealing with ice. Don't get me wrong, I've tried to have a nice fight before with somebody. It hurt a lot. Anyway, the totals here, unheard of. Pensacola got 8 inches. And yes, Pensacola, Florida. You're hearing me right. That is Pensacola, Florida with 8 inches. Over towards South Georgia here, easily range of about 6 to 8 inches. And then even towards areas like Brunswick, we got an inch, 2 inches of snow. Even possibly up to, well, I would say a little bit less than an inch over towards Jacksonville. I think you had a little bit more in the way of ice here. Like I said, these totals for these areas, unheard of. Charleston, South Carolina, 2 inches. Just outside Myrtle Beach, potential for up to 4 inches. Then, of course, we get towards North Carolina. It's a little bit more common, but not so much towards the coastline here. But there's even a pocket here where we got up to about 8 inches of snow. It's, like I said, this is probably not something we're going to be seeing anytime soon. Perhaps not again in our lifetime. So, I was happy to be able to cover this event. But in any case, though, I bet you guys are wondering, after an insane event like this, just what could be next. And that's, of course, what this video is going to be about. Also, I'd be remiss, especially since I live in this area, to talk about what happened just to the south of I-85. Unfortunately, with this, there are still ongoing power outages from this event here. A lot of the roads south of Atlanta did ice over. Originally, for the Atlanta metro and areas just a little further to the south, and I would say it would be north of Griffin, a lot of people, myself included, weren't too sure of what to expect here. We were expecting more or less maybe half an inch of snow at best, maybe closer to 3/4. But deformation band actually occurred over here, and this is the reason why we ended up seeing this overperform over towards the Atlanta metro here. I'm just a little bit off to the northwest of town, and as you can see, there's nothing over here. But if we go further to the south here, again towards I-85 east, different story. Well, like I said, we're going to actually have a video on that in the future, discussing what deformation bands are, confluence bands, because they are important, not just to winter weather, but also severe weather. But in any case, though, let's go ahead and keep things rolling here, because as I said before, this video is about what's happening next. And I do have some good news for you all. As I mentioned before, on the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks, you can see that we start to level off with our temperatures. No more of the below average deal here over towards the deep south here. We're actually going to be near normal. It's going to feel a lot like how it's supposed to feel during January. Not the greatest, but not exactly the worst. And then, of course, as we get towards the 8 to 14 day outlook here, if I can keep that on the screen, you can see that we actually start to warm up quite notably, especially over towards the Midwest as well. So eventually that warm air is going to work its way to the east, and as a result, we're going to be feeling pretty good. May even start to feel like early spring just a little bit. Also, be remiss if I didn't talk about what's going on out towards the west, where we're expecting those below average temperatures over there, and a slight little change here, maybe an increased probability of moisture over here towards parts of the southwest. Perhaps not far enough to the west where we really want it to be, but that's another notable change. Over towards the deep south, precipitation probabilities are a little bit elevated there as well. We'll be keeping an eye on that, especially with the warming trend. While winter weather may not be in the equation as much, with this warming trend as well, severe weather could also be a possibility in the future. Obviously, nothing set in stone at this point, but definitely something I'm going to be keeping an eye out for. As we start February, also see a notable warming trend again over towards the deep south. Also some cooler air stationing itself up towards the northern states. So again, as we go further along here, I do think the pattern will allow for maybe a couple of severe weather opportunities. Where that will be right now, it's too early to say, because I won't have a good read in just how this warm and cold air will interact until we get much further along here. But you can see also another signal for increased precip over towards the Ohio Valley. We talked about this a little bit in the February outlook we dropped. Also, thanks for all the overwhelming support on that video. That video is doing really well, so thought I'd say thank you. But anyway, all rambling aside here, as we go to the 8 to 14 day outlook, not a whole lot to really talk about. Nothing significant as we close out the month here as of right now. In regards to precipitation, there's a slight risk of heavier rain, most likely over towards the deep south. As far as winter weather is concerned, all of that's mainly confined to the northwestern mountains, and from that point, there's only maybe a slight risk for below average temperatures towards the New England region and further up towards the northeast, and of course over towards Alaska as well. So now let's go ahead and get into the model data here. I know I've been talking a little bit about this video, but there was a lot to unpack too, so just bear with me. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a look at our model data. Of course, we're going to do the typical model comparison here. So we're going to have GFS and the Euro on our screen here, GFS being the dominant model that we use, but Euro will be in the bottom left corner. But in any case, as we go further along here, things we're going to be paying attention to, of course, the ridging and the troughing. And there's going to be, like I said, there's going to be a lot of ridging expected over the course of the next couple of weeks. Kind of kick these troughs out of here and the cold temperatures to go along with it. So really, like I've been saying over the last few days, we just really have to get through this week. As you can see, by the time we get towards Saturday into Sunday, notice the ridging that we have occurring here. And this is going to make an immediate difference. And it doesn't matter which model we're looking at here, both of them show it. So as we go further along here, get towards about 108 hours out, you can see the same thing going on with the Euro. Ridging occurring here. Still a little bit of cold air left over, and we still have to keep an eye on the northeast over here as well. But far cry from what we've been dealing with in recent time here. So go further along with this as well. This storm system I'm keeping a close eye on. I'm not really I'm not really expecting a whole lot in the way of winter weather. There is a possibility for it, especially further off towards the Ohio Valley in the northeast, mid-Atlantic, but towards the deep south, this is mostly going to come in the form of rain for you guys. And the same thing can be said regardless of which model we're looking at this point. Now, things do kind of differ a little bit here as we look at the GFS and the Euro. There is a little secondary feature here that kind of pops up with the Euro that's not really showing up on the GFS, or at least it's not showing up as prominently as it is on the Euro. But in any case, though, it does look like we're going to be pretty busy over towards this region. Depending on how the cold air interacts with this trough that we have here, Could be a little bit of ice mixed in with this as well, just based off of this look. Still have this big trough out here towards the southwest. It's going to keep some of those temperatures cool, but it's also going to maybe increase rain chances over towards western Texas before all is said and done. Then as we go further along here, we'll start to see concern increase maybe for a little bit of severe weather. It has a nice little ski jump to it, which is something that we look for in regards to our severe weather trends. But I still think at this point we're trying to get that lifting mechanism a little bit better organized here. And also, question that we often will ask during this time of year is, will we get sufficient Gulf of Mexico moisture? There have been some models that have been showing this, but as I've said before, when you get the 240 hours out, everything becomes pretty uncertain. Can't have a whole lot of confidence in those forecasts at this point. But one thing I do notice, though, is that if we do end up getting a storm system here, it's most likely going to be in the form of a linear event as of right now. Too early to tell what kind of storm mode we may end up getting. I think if everything comes together, though, along with the threat of maybe a couple of discrete cells, we might be covering this here. But as of right now, I wouldn't be too concerned. But again, what I'm also watching here is watching how this cold air interacts as this low pressure deepens as we go further along. Once we get towards the second and beyond, that's where I'm curious about the threat of yet another winter storm. Of course, this is going to be much further off towards the north here. It's going to be over towards the Ohio Valley and working its way towards the northeast and the mid-Atlantic here before all is said and done. We'll watch that head out, and that's how we start out our February. Once we go beyond that point here, do see another trough coming in on the Euro. GFS is kind of showing a similar trend, but not quite as prominent here. So interesting little setup coming into play, but again, I really think the storm track is going to be much further off to the north this time around. So as a result, wouldn't be too concerned about anything over towards the deep south. It's really going to be over towards the Midwest and the mid-Atlantic, eastern half, the northeastern half of the U.S. as well. In particular, where I would be more concerned about some active weather as we get towards the very end of these model runs here. So as we go further along here, we're going to go ahead and look at the temperatures. And this is where this is something that you guys should be looking forward to. So of course, right now, we're kind of in the thick of it. We have abundant cold temperatures, well below average weather, out of season weather, whichever one you want to call it, across the board here for the lower 48. Really, no one's being spared. But as we go further along here, you can see that towards the end of the week, this is Saturday heading into Sunday, look at how that warm air makes its return. And right now, I'd be kind of hard-pressed to call this warm, but compared to what we've been dealing with, I'm pretty sure a lot of us will take it, myself included. By the time we get towards Sunday, we're starting to look a little bit more like we should across the lower 48 here. Towards the mountains, of course, is where the coldest temperatures are going to be. And like I said, it's a universal thing amongst these two models at this point. Warming trend is very likely at this point. So again, all we got to do is just get through the week. And once we go beyond that point, I want you to pay attention to this little warm sector that starts to pop up over the deep south here. And this is where my spidey senses start to tingle a little bit, if you will. That sounded weird. In regards to severe weather, you can see like towards this area right here, towards Texas, where we're getting into the mid to upper 70s right here, and you start seeing that progress off to the east. There's a frontal boundary that's going to be associated with that, and that's where I start really kind of side-eyeing that. Right now, it's not, of course, guaranteed, but with other dynamics potentially coming into play, i.e. moisture, instability, etc., that might be a point of interest once again. And again, both of the models are kind of picking up on something. GFS is a tad bit more aggressive with the warm sector as we get into the medium range. Seems like there could be chances of severe weather a little bit sooner with it. But as we go forward here, it doesn't really matter beyond that point. You see a very similar trend, although it seems like the Euro progresses a little bit, this potential storm system a little bit faster at this point. But in either case, though, it's pretty universal at this point. Something that we're going to be needing to watch towards the very beginning of February here. So Definitely curious to see how things ultimately pan out with that. Last but not least, of course, we'll go ahead and take a look at the precipitation models. And of course, as we go throughout the rest of this week, the main thing that we're going to be paying attention to, if anything, will be more or less the lake effect snow. With those lake surface temperatures being warmer than the air temperatures over towards this region, it's going to be pretty much a given that we're going to see some lake effect snow here. There have been snow squalls and lake effect snow warnings over towards this region all throughout the week, and I expect that to continue. Some of these places could see potentially up to another 6 to 8 inches or more. Some places even were showing a foot at one point earlier in the week here. So plenty more snow left to fall over towards these regions. Now, as we go further along, you can see this cold air finally start moving out. You can see the red line starting to overtake where the blue lines once were. There's going to be an increase in shower activity over towards the deep south, maybe towards the mountains. You might get some snow, but for the most part, things are looking relatively tame as we get into the last week of January. Now, as we go further along, again, as mentioned before, we do start to see a notable warming trend. And as we look towards the Rockies, we have these little storm systems that pop up here. But without the cold air, for the most part, we're just dealing with scattered rain showers here and there, most likely in the form of chilly rain, unfortunately, which I'm sure a lot of people don't like either, but you have to pick your battles here, folks. But as we go further along here, this is where we start to see a little bit more in activity for the northeast here off the GFS. As we go to the Euro, as we get towards the 200-hour mark, this is where we start to see that increase in precipitation to close out January. And the interesting thing is there's a nice little feature that pops up over here at about 210 hours. Only the Euro showing it. GFS is not really hot on that right now. However, as we go further along here, this is where things kind of get real interesting here. See a classic case of cold air damming as we get towards 252 hours out here. Low pressure well off to the west of this to go with it. So there's good moisture. Question is, if the cold air matches up with this moisture, especially towards the lower levels of the atmosphere, we kind of have that little temperature inversion. I do think ice would be possible here. It's way too early to tell given the fact that we're past that 10-day mark that I always like talking about. But the thing is, GFS and Euro are showing a relatively similar outcome, although the timing is a bit different on here. It's definitely a signal that's caught my eye at this point. Now, this will be on the weekend from the looks of it right now. Obviously, as we know, these can progress. These can progress at a differing pace from what we're seeing now. So, anytime towards the weekend of, I would say the first, like the 31st into the second, going to be watching this real close here. Don't know exactly what the final outcome will be with this, but definitely something that all of us need to be monitoring, whether you're towards the deep south or over towards the Ohio Valley in the northeast here. But this does seem like it has quite a bit in the way of ice potential. So let's keep things rolling here. It becomes a pretty notable snow system for the northeast here as well. We'll watch that move out, and we'll also sim that on the Euro to go along with it. What I find interesting with the Euro is it often seems like the Euro has follow-up systems to go along with this. GFS, it takes a little bit longer for these to get going. But at least in this case here, as we go further along, all the way up till the 6th, we don't have much of anything. But unfortunately, once we do get to the morning of the 6th and beyond here, it seems like we have more potential for ice storms here. Like I said, stark difference to what we've been seeing to where the deep south is always in play for these last couple of storms. We're looking more so over towards the Ohio Valley in the Midwest, Northeast, Mid-Atlantic range, not so much the deep south. And the Euro's kind of in good agreement along with that, although the progression again seems like it's a little bit earlier. So we get towards the end of this model run here. Interesting to see this little thing pop up here, but the snow line, the rain snow line, the 540 line, so to speak, would be here, all the way back this way towards the Ozarks and beyond. So got my share of questions with that. Obviously, being as far out of range as we are, not really too keen on this, but definitely something I'm going to be watching with extreme interest here. That being said, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know this was a lengthier one, but we had a lot to unpack on this one as well. Make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you very soon. Till then, take care and have an awesome rest of your Wednesday.